Good afternoon and welcome to our local candidates debate hosted by St. John Human Development Council. I'd like to introduce our candidates participating this afternoon. On your left, Rodney Weston from the Progressive Conservative Party, Armand Cormier from the New Democratic Party, Wayne Long from the Liberal Party, Ann Mcallister from the Green Party, Independent candidate Neville Barnett, and Independent candidate Stuart Jameson. We have some opening remarks, and then 5 set questions, and then some concluding remarks. And just in case I forget, we want to thank our host, Shane Cassidy, and the Chinese Cultural Center, Rogers Television, for taping and broadcasting this important debate. And please, audience members, help yourself to materials out at the back, including a special issue of Around the Block with a election insert. So we will start with opening remarks, and we'll start, we had a draw beforehand, and we'll start with Mr. Weston.
Thank you very much. And to begin with, everyone, thank you for taking time out of your day to come here today and listen to all the candidates' remarks. Thank you to the Human Development Council for organizing this as well. As introduced, and my name is Rodney Weston. I'm the Conservative candidate for the riding of St. John Rothesay in this federal election. A little bit about myself. I was previously the Member of Parliament from 2008 until 2015, and I worked very closely with a lot of the organizations represented here today, and I believe that we did a lot of great work during that time and brought some great opportunities to the St. John region. As a Member of Parliament, I never professed to know the issues better than the people who are on the ground themselves. That's why I chose to work very closely with these organizations. These organizations are closest to the issues that affect us all, and certainly, hopefully, will be reelected and look forward to working with these organizations again going forward. Thank you very much once again for being here.
Mr. Cormier?
Hi, my name is Armand Cormier. I'm your New Democrat candidate. I'm a game and software developer who, the poverty situation, it hits really close to home for me. So when I saw the NDP platform and the opportunity that we had to make lives better in St. John, I wanted to make sure that I put my energy behind that. My understanding is St. John is still by far the one city in Canada with the highest child poverty rating. In this particular ward, it borders on 50%, this being the uptown and south end of St. John. I know we can do better, but it needs to start with the government, with the policies and the passion to put people first. And that's why I'm here to represent today.
Mr. Long?
Good afternoon. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Randy and the Human Development Council for putting on this debate. It's important as leaders that we stand up and we recognize the challenges that we face in this riding. I can remember being here in 2015, same debate on social issues. I had my bullet points, I had my buzzwords. I had no idea the challenges that this riding faces and has faced. I had no idea the amount of people that are hurting in this riding, that need a hand up, that need help. We started with an ambitious plan after 2015 with the Canada Child Benefit that is lifting thousands of families out of poverty. We don't just talk the talk, we also walk the walk. We serve sandwiches in our office every day for those who are hungry. We serve breakfast almost every weekend at the Outflow Men's Shelter. This riding needs a Member of Parliament that doesn't close doors.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Mcallister?
Thank you very much for inviting me today to take part. My name is Ann Mcallister, and I'm the candidate for the Green Party running in St. John Rothesay. For this riding, I have many issues that are front of mind for me, and here are some of the highlights. Oh, but first, I should tell you who I am. I am a retired teacher. I taught English and music, and I still play the organ at Silver Falls United Church, where I'm also the music director. I ran in 3 prior provincial elections, most recently the one in 2018 for Rothesay, and this is my first federal my first time being a federal candidate. So yes, here are some of the priorities that I see as key. They apply to our riding here, but also to our province and our country and our world.
Mr. Barnett?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Neville Barnett. I am standing as an independent candidate for the riding of St. John Rothesay. Many people might know me as a person who used to work at the airport in St. John. I worked at the airport for Air Canada for 25 years, while about 17 of them at the airport. So I see some familiar faces over here. Now, you don't see any of my signs out there. I am an independent with limited funds. That says it all. But you do, and you are familiar with my initials. My initials NB, just like New Brunswick. And I plan to represent the people of St. John Rothesay with pride, with New Brunswick pride, with Canadian pride.
Mr. Jameson?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you to everybody who's here. I was an MLA in St. John Fundy for 19 years. I was Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Minister of Tourism and Parks, and Government House Leader. I have worked with the poverty issues in St. John throughout my career. I've had to deal with a mandate of child poverty, of working with Lakewood Head Start. As a volunteer, I helped to rebuild it, and I actually worked in communication with Romero House. My wife and I have a small business that we've been selling at the impact market, and the proceeds, 30% of it goes to the Boys and Girls Club. I have a big affiliation with helping people in St. John. I worked as in a ministry out at the St. John Corrections, and I feel that the Human Development Council is one of the most important factors in fighting poverty and helping out people in this city.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. So our first question, and Mr. Cormier, you'll be the first to answer. Campaign 2000, the Human Development Council is a steering committee member, released a report on Monday that mapped the prevalence of child poverty by federal riding from coast to coast. The child poverty rate in St. John Rothesay is a staggering 28.7%. 4,270 children lived below the poverty line in 2017. The rate sits in the worst quintile of ridings in the country. What is your party's plan to address this stubborn rate?
You know, it's important that we talk about the environment, but I'm glad that after a couple weeks of stating our position, that this is a question that's finally front and center. We need to put people first, and that doesn't come from tax cuts, because those taxes are being saved by people who already have money. It's not easy being poor, and it's not easy being poor in New Brunswick. It's St. John in particular. Our plan is to start off by making things easier for people. We'll start off by instituting a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, which is a huge, huge upswing from our current $11.50. It still doesn't close the gap completely on the living wage, but it puts us in a strong, powerful position to move forward. A lot of people need to be able to have these sort of things so that they can stand on their own 2 feet. We also commit to building 500,000 affordable housing units over the next 10 years, starting right away. We'll work to develop a universal child care program to make it easier for parents and guardians to get to work without facing the expensive costs of daycare.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Long?
Thank you for the question. Our government instituted the Canada Child Benefit, which is one of the most transformational, life-changing programs that has been instituted in our country. Our poverty rate across New Brunswick has dropped from 14% to 9%, and the child poverty rate has dropped from 32% to 28.7%. And that may not seem like a lot, but for the first time in years, we are making progress. We are dropping that number down. And as a liberal, as a progressive, we believe that good government is for the many, not the few, and we need policies that are going to impact everybody. And for far too long in this riding, nonprofits and people living in poverty haven't had an advocate. And I go to Ottawa every week, And I don't just knock on doors, I kick down doors to represent those people in need in our riding. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to be a voice for those that struggle in this riding.
Ms. McAllister?
Speaking of the Child Benefit Act, to lift people out of, to claim that we're lifting people out of poverty by putting them from a few $100s below the poverty line to a few $100s above is hardly tackling child and human poverty. The Green Party would institute an early childhood, early learning child care program that was basic, affordable, and available to all children, conveniently located in schools and near transportation hubs. The Green Party would bring in a guaranteed basic income, guaranteeing that no family, no person would fall into destitution. We would bring in universal pharmacare, which means that people don't have to choose between filling their prescriptions and buying their food. And we would have low-income dental, especially targeted at children living in poverty.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Mr. Barnett?
Well, I'm not afraid to jump into controversy right away, and I will face controversy. We have to identify the group that is most affected by child poverty here in St. John, and that is children living in single-family homes. These single-family homes are mostly the head of the family is a single mother. This is further alienated. This is further aggravated by court systems favoring moms as the most suitable parent to primary caregiving. I don't think this is always the case. It's time we reintroduce a similar bill to C-560 to ensure that parents have equal responsibility and time with their children, unless they mutually agree one parent will take care of their children.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Mr. Jamieson?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think you've hit an interesting point. The big thing that I see and I found in my own writing was jobs and training and people on income assistance. The rates need to improve. Jobs have to be made available. I found by giving people a job, it really changed the atmosphere in the whole household. It gave them confidence. And I found in my own writing that helping people with training and finding a way out of the rut that some people get into, it always came back to giving them the ability to fend for themselves. And some people I know, they have restrictions in doing that, and that's the people that we have to really look after. I also think in our school system that public health is very important to look at the children that have problems and should be very more intensely dealt with.
Thank you, Mr. Jamieson. Mr. Weston?
Thank you. As I said previously in my opening remarks, I don't believe that Ottawa has the answer to deal with the situations here on the ground in St. John. We need to work with the organizations that are closest to the issues, and that, as your member of parliament, I believe, is my role to provide funding, go after federal assistance to support the services that these organizations deliver. Whether it's One Change operation in the Old North End, or the Human Development Council, or First Steps, these people are closest to the issues, and I believe it's important that we work together and to try to source the funds to be able to attack the problem firsthand.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Now we move on to our second question, and Mr. Long, you'll be the first to answer. A recent report on homelessness identified that St. John's emergency shelters had a combined occupancy rate of more than 100% over the course of the summer, from June 1st to August 31st. At the same time, outreach services connected with more individuals sleeping rough than ever before. What would you do to ensure the availability of housing and mental health services in the region?
Thanks for the question. I think the first thing that I would do, and what I've done since 2015, is to be a part of the community, be a part of the nonprofit community that is trying to work every day to change the lives of those that suffer in our riding. I have an open door policy. I was proud to vote for and support C-97, which designated housing as a human right that was entrenched into law. We signed a $300 million housing agreement with the province over 10 years. We need an MP in this riding who understands what's going on the ground. We need an MP in this riding who is going to work daily, hand in hand with nonprofits and those in need in this riding. Again, I have an open door policy. We will continue to understand what's going on by being available, accessible, and then going to Ottawa and getting to work, bringing the proper funding back to this riding so we can address these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Ms. Mcallister?
To address homelessness in our community is an absolutely essential thing to do. It is intolerable that in a country like Canada, people should be sleeping rough, and even more intolerable as the weather changes. So, to me, addressing this is tackling both housing and mental health concerns. For housing, we need more safe, affordable housing. And the Green Party pledges to make federal investment in nonprofit housing and co-ops, and to refocus the mandate of Canada Mortgage and Housing away from de-risking lenders and towards cooperating with creditors so that nonprofits can be financed fairly. For mental health, certainly a big part of mental health is the addiction as well. And the Green Party would declare a national opioid emergency and would also work closely with community agencies such as the Needle Exchange Program for safe harm reduction strategies as well as treatment.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Mr. Barnett?
In order for us to tackle homelessness, we first have to identify the reason why a person is homeless. Why did they leave their home in the first place? Was it because of abuse? Was it because of addiction? Because it was loneliness. Unless we're able to tackle that problem and cure that problem, sending people back to a home, they will not stay. And I will tell you that right off the bat, because I was one of these people. I had a great job. After my marriage broke down, I wasn't the same person. We have to tackle the mental health. We have to tackle the addiction. We have to tackle the fear of sometimes being alone. We in St. John are quite lucky in some respects that our housing costs are lower than people in Toronto and Montreal.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Mr. Jameson?
Yes, and I think you've hit on a chord there about the problems that people face with their mental health and drugs and alcohol addiction. I find that when I did my ministry out at the St. John Corrections, a lot of the problems there are similar to what people, why they're out on the street, and a lot of them end up in corrections. And what has to happen there is a whole treatment plan for people using the Ridgewood Treatment Center and places like that. Sometimes addictions have to be treated almost like hospital care, to take somebody off an addiction and put them into a different situation, teaching them how to live without the people that were around them, and to give them a hand up and to help them out. And I find that the Human Development Council is a big part of that type of resource.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. Mr. Weston?
Thank you. When it comes to housing, I think it's important that your member of parliament is continuously advocating for more funds for housing initiatives. Affordable housing, access to affordable housing, and subsidized housing here in the St. John region is a huge issue, and we need to continue. I was very successful in getting funds for several organizations, working together with them to get these funds to see some new housing stock and retrofits and upgrades to the existing housing stock. I think it's important to continue that effort, and I certainly will do that if I'm reelected again. With mental health, it's a huge challenge, and we've seen the serious issues here in St. John, and we need to work on those very, very much together.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Mr. Cormier?
With regards to the housing, we have a plan to bring in 500 million affordable homes. We also are looking at the places where the cost of housing and the rentals has inflated to unmanageable proportions. And we're now looking at subsidies of up to $5,000 a year in the places that need it most to cover the rental costs so that people don't have to move out into the streets. With regards to mental health, New Democrats have believed for a long time that mental health should be a part of the healthcare program. And Medicare cards should give you access to all the resources you need to make sure you're healthy from head to toe, and that includes the mind. And a difficult part of that is sometimes the pharmaceuticals are necessary, and we don't have coverage for that. So I know people who are taking things for mental health issues, for anxiety, for depression, and it's very, very hard when you're on the right track, and then suddenly you can't afford those. So I think it's very important that those items, Medicare, the pharmaceuticals, and the housing are all addressed, and they certainly all impact each other.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Now on to the third question, and Ms. Mcallister, you'll be the first to answer. The 2016 census revealed that New Brunswick was the only province that lost population between 2011 and 2016. And the St. John census metropolitan area was the only CMA out of 35 that reduced its population over that period. Since then, both the province and city have stepped up their efforts to attract immigrants. Do you agree with this strategy? If so, what supports would you put in place to foster newcomer integration and settlement in the St. John region?
Thank you very much. Yes, immigration is indeed key to us in St. John and New Brunswick, not only growing our population, but growing our economy, because many of new immigrants are entrepreneurs and they start businesses, and that provides employment. So therefore, what we need to do, I believe, is to facilitate accreditation with professional organizations. Too often, immigrants with skills we need are stuck in jobs outside of their fields because they can't get accreditation at all or in a timely manner. We also need to increase supports and strengthen language training and settlement services to integrate newcomers into our province. And I also believe that we need to create paths to citizenship, and so that people don't get trapped in limbo as temporary foreign workers with no paths to citizenship and participation.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett?
In order for us to attract people, we need to have an attractive city. St. John uptown is quite nice, but look around. We are in shambles. We need to spruce up our city. People will come here, very nice, look around to buy a house. They're not going to want to stay. We need to set a new stage. We need to highlight our city. We need to create a sense of, wow, something totally different, where people want to come here, where people want to visit here, where people want to stay here. We need to invite people that have skills, that have creation, that have entrepreneurial spirits. We cannot be consumers and importers anymore. We have to be creators. We have to be exporters. We are a port city. We also have to become an export city. There's a lot that St. John can do. As I said, inviting not only people, but inviting businesses to let them know, listen, we have land over here that's relatively inexpensive to where you would operate. Come and expand. We have a workforce ready and willing to work. Bring your people with you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Mr. Jameson?
Well, thank you very much. I really truly believe that the city has done a great job with the immigrants that have come here. I'm very proud of the fact that the YMCA and many of the churches in this city went out of their way to facilitate what all of a sudden set upon us in a way. It was all of a sudden we had to jump up and do some things. Personally, we helped with some churches with helping to move people in and put the furniture together. And I agree that we need to really help out with jobs, entrepreneurs who are coming to the city to help them start up their business and put in place programs for training. But I think at the same time, we could help out with housing by Canada Mortgage and Housing and NB Housing, helping to facilitate the building of new houses and entertain the fact that we can help out in a bigger way. But we also have our own population that needs the same type of treatment.
Mr. Weston?
Thank you very much. And I think we'll all agree that we need to see more new Canadians coming to our region, and that's how we're going to grow our economy. And if we're going to do that successfully, we can't focus on numbers. We have to focus on making sure that the resources are there so the people we bring into our region have the ability to succeed. We need to provide them with the proper training to be able to upgrade their credentials. We need to be able to provide them with proficiency in French and English here, help them to develop their skills so that they can become contributing members of our local economy and help us grow our local economy. We need to put the emphasis on ensuring that the resources are available to ensure their success.
Mr. Cormier?
I believe we have a moral responsibility to help all of our brothers and sisters, no matter where they come from. And a New Democrat government believes that the immigrants makes Canada stronger. We welcome the opportunity to welcome refugees fleeing violence and persecution and make sure they live in a fairer world. With regards to refugees and immigrants, we believe in keeping families together through a faster family reunification program. It's also important, as Mr. Weston said, to make sure we have a program in place to recognize their credentials. My understanding from reading a Telegraph Journal article very recently is that we've got hundreds and hundreds of job vacancies in St. John, but we don't have the people to fill them. I think a big part of that, too, is the fact that we've had an exodus of the young people drawn out west for our economy that's very resource extraction related. And I think part of the solution for this and making sure we keep people here is focusing on the green economy, because the job creation is going to happen wherever the people are.
Mr. Long?
We need to embrace immigration. I was proud to be part of a group of MPs that brought in the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. The Atlantic Immigration Pilot has opened up doors. It's broken down barriers to allow organizations, companies, citizens to immigrate to St. John Rothesay. I believe that we need to lead and we need to be vocal about the strategic need for immigration. For the first time in our province's history, we grew by 16,000 people last year. That's a significant milestone. Our government has also pledged to increase the Atlantic Immigration Pilot by 5,000 people for the next several years. So, again, as a leader in this community, we need to embrace immigration, we need to understand its value, and we need to talk openly about it as a community. The changes we've seen in St. John Rothesay over the last 4 years have been profound in welcoming newcomers. As a government, we're working with the YMCA. We delivered $2.5 million to them. We delivered $577,000 to the City Succeed and Stay program. And my job is to create opportunities, bring funding to St. John Rothesay to retain immigrants. It's easy to attract, it's harder to retain, and that's why we've delivered as a government funding to keep immigrants here and grow our economy, grow our city, grow our tax base.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Now on to the fourth question, and Mr. Barnett, you'll be the first to respond. According to the 2016 census, more than 10% of St. John's youth between 15 and 19 years of age were NEET, not in education, employment, or training. That's over 360 young people, more than Moncton or Fredericton. What will you or your government do to improve the lives of these youth? How will you keep kids in school and get them trained for the labor force?
Well, the first thing we need to do is we have to make sure that our kids stay in school, not until 16, or do not have the option to leave at 16, but they have to stay in school until the age of 18. That has to change, because too many kids today at 16 years old decide, I want to leave school, and and they quit. If you look at my website, I've actually outlined a program for a post-secondary education for young children, a national program that is time Canada adopted, a program that does not include taxes, but just creative ideas. I've come up with an idea to help young people for up to $5,000 in training and student loans. And I've actually come up with an idea of how to come up with the revenue, $1.8 billion. No federal leader can say that. They make plans, they give you promises, but they never back it up. Check out my website and tell me what you think.
Mr. Jamieson?
Yes, actually, when I was young, I was out on the street at an early age, similar to what this question's about. My mother died when I was 10, and I didn't get along with my father, so I was out on the street. And I realized what young people face on trying to put something together in their lives. Education and training are the most important things. I had the good fortune to get into St. John Institute of Technology to take carpentry. And that's what's needed here, is somebody to pick up the pieces of a young person's life and head them in the right direction. Financing, similar to what university students get, I feel is very important. It's okay to say go to school, but these young people need financing to do that, and there's programs available, should be made available to help keep them in school if they are living on their own, and to keep pointing them in the right direction before a trade or a university education. I think that's important for our society.
Thank you, Mr. Jamieson. Mr. Weston?
Thank you. I believe that the biggest thing that any federal government can do is to create the economic climate that attracts financial investments. And this in turn will create jobs and economic growth. Because if individuals see that opportunity, see those potential jobs that are there, they'll take the initiative to go and seek out those programs that we talk about and get the training required, the skills, the trades that we need to see moving our economy forward. I think that the best thing that we can do is to work to ensure that those opportunities are there for our younger people, and they'll look for those opportunities. They'll work with the organizations that we're talking to here today to find those opportunities, and they'll help them get the training that's required.
Mr. Cormier?
I have a really good answer for this, but it's a page and a half, and I don't think I have enough time for that. So I'm going to freestyle it a little bit. I think part of it is, as Mr. Jamieson said, part of it is make sure funding's there and making sure that the education is affordable for the students, for the young people. And a part of that, I'm proud to say, the NDP platform includes eliminating the interest rate on student loans. But I think from a personal perspective, part of that is also making sure that there's motivation for the young people. I myself, I've never wanted to leave New Brunswick. I've chased work all over the province. I've lived in Fredericton, St. John, Moncton, Miramichi. I've been all over the place. And I think if it's hard for you to imagine the kind of work that you'd be doing in your hometown, what is the point? What I want to make sure that we're able to do is we can see the promise of the green economy. We can see the promise of the new businesses that are going to spread up all around us, and make sure that we don't see the motivation and be replaced by despair too early. A couple weeks ago, I met a young man named Thomas in King Square, and he signed my Elections Canada paper for get my name on the ballot. And he was telling me that he cares about the environment, it's issue number one, but he's taking business and he's concerned that that makes him a double agent. I want to make sure that we have, that motivation still there for him by the time he gets out of school.
Mr. Long?
Youth are the most important asset that we have in this riding, and we need to invest in youth in this riding. That's why I was thrilled to go to bat and go after federal funding for awesome organizations like the Human Development Council. Greg Bishop, Randy Hatfield put in a proposal called UYES, a Youth Employment Strategy. It was $2.7 million that was going to help 185 at-risk youth in this riding to give them support, self-esteem, training, wraparound services, resume writing, connecting with jobs. We also went to bat for Barry Galloway at One Change and developed a One Future youth employment strategy. $500,000 that is going to take 50 youth out of this riding that are at risk, that need help. We've also invested $4.7 million with the John Howard Intercultural Youth Initiative. It's about investing in our youth, but it's about giving the nonprofits, the organizations in this riding, the resources, the supports to help them. Time and time, before 2015, and actually when I first got into office, youth were coming into my office lost. No support, no training, no help, no connective to anything. And these programs that we have developed and are executing on in this riding are changing the lives of hundreds and hundreds of youth. If we can educate these youth, they can be employed, they can pay taxes, they can contribute to our economy as opposed to being on the system. So we are making tremendous progress. My job after 2015 is to get back to work and continue these programs to help our youth. Thank you.
Ms. Mcallister?
In order for young people to be able to get the training that they need, that Mr. Weston mentioned, that they need to develop professions and move ahead in life, they need to be able to afford that training. So the Green Party is proposing free tuition for all Canadian students to post-secondary education. The Green Party would also forgive the federal portion of the student debt, so students aren't dragging this albatross with them into their into a precarious job market. The other end of it is beginning at the beginning with the early childhood, early learning child care, which the mandate of that is affordable, universal child care that will give children a strong foundation for learning and living into their futures. It is an investment in their future. It is also provides women, single moms particularly, with a path to the workplace and education and training. We also need to support local organizations that work with at-risk youth, such as the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, the Sexual Resource Center, and youth shelters like Safe Harbor that deal with young people and give them the counseling and the support and the mentorship that they need to find their paths if they are at risk. And the Green Party, collaboration is in our DNA, and we will work with these community groups to make these programs more available, wider spread, and thrive.
Thank you. Now we move on to the fifth and final question. And the first to answer this will be Mr. Jameson. The frontline nonprofit service providers in this community perform essential work in addressing the needs of vulnerable and marginalized residents. They include homeless shelters, food banks, and outreach services. The Senate Special Committee on the Charitable Sector recently released a report after extensive consultation on how to create a stronger sector. What will you or your government do to support the charitable and nonprofit sector?
Well, I think we brought up, all of us together have a similar opinion, is that the government needs to step up to the plate for what's happening to our marginal communities and for the less fortunate. And I feel that the Human Development Council has a mandate, or could have a mandate, to help coordinate, and does help coordinate all of these in a bigger way, so that the funding would be properly administered to all of our charitable organizations and nonprofit groups, to coordinate it so that we're not working against each other, but we're working with each other, so that people get what they need. And places like Romero House, with Evelyn McNulty, gets the proper funding. Other places in this city that need better coordination, I find, can address the needs of our community in a bigger way. And I feel that the Human Development Council has always struck out to represent these, and could be in a bigger coordinating manner to help out in a bigger way. And that would be one of my recommendations.
Mr. Weston?
Thank you. I certainly recognize and understand the importance that the charitable sector plays in delivery of services to those who are vulnerable and marginalized in our community. And one of the things that the Senate committee report pointed out, and I think is very relevant here in St. John, Rothesay, is that they suggested that the government needs to find a new way to interact with the charitable sector. And I think this is important. And secondly, the other thing that they pointed out is that we need to listen to what those areas are saying and go outside of those large urban centers. Our issues are not all the same as they are in Toronto and Vancouver. They want governments to get down into the issues and work with groups like the Human Development Council and organizations that are here on the ground and come up with solutions, and then government should be able to hopefully find the resources and support that. And that, as your member of parliament, that would be my job, to find those resources and work with those organizations to support the needs that are there.
Mr. Cormier?
So the report in question, I had only started reading yesterday, and it's 190 pages, so I didn't get it all. But I fast-forwarded a little bit to the conclusion, and part of the recommendations from that report included some necessary adjustments to taxation laws. And while I can't say that's in the NDP platform, I would certainly look into making sure that these charitable nonprofit organizations get the support that they deserve. But I think from a wider long-term perspective, we need to start looking more at making sure people are looked after so that they're not relying on the food banks, they're not relying on these other last-minute desperate attempts to live a good, safe life. I mean, we need to have support systems to make sure people have the money to be able to stand up on their own 2 feet. And I think, by and large, the NDP platform would make sure that's in place and remove some of the burden off of these organizations, because I know people working in the local food banks are doing more than just serving food and making sure people are looked after. They're updating resumes. There's lots of things that the government should be doing to make things easier for everybody all around.
Mr. Long?
Thank you. Work with the sector. Be part of the sector. Go to their meetings. Listen to them. Have an open door so they feel that they have somebody that they can talk to. That's what this is about. This is about electing a representative that's going to go to the meeting sincerely, participate, and listen, and then take those concerns back to Ottawa, seek out federal funding, seek the right runways for nonprofits to apply for funding, and then go to bat in Ottawa. Scratch, claw, kick down doors on their behalf. Before 2015, this sector was not listened to, they were dismissed, and they were not respected. And what I've done is try to be part of the solution. We're also coming forth with an $805 million social finance fund and investment readiness program that people like Seth Asimaskis and the Community Loan Fund can apply to. We're availing $50 million of that fund immediately to help the nonprofit sector. We all know how cash-strapped and how unsupported this sector has been in this riding and in this region, and it's our job, it's my job as your federal MP to work with them, go back to Ottawa, and deliver much-needed funding.
Ms. Mcallister?
The MP is indeed the interface between federal money and the social needs and the social agencies that serve those needs and try to meet those needs, too often with inadequate funding. As I said before, collaboration is key to the way the Green Party operates, and we would collaborate, meet with the local service organizations and service providers and the clients as well. We never forget the people to determine their needs and the goals that they have for themselves. For the homeless, the obvious answer is to house them in safe, affordable housing. And the Green Party would direct federal dollars towards nonprofit and cooperative housing. I myself believe that these are most effective when the people themselves are involved in the design of the community, in setting up the way they want the community to function. When they have a stake, they're going to be more engaged and they will take better care of it. And I also believe, too, that This is the way that we can move people forward and help them move themselves out of poverty.
Mr. Barnett?
Well, poverty is poverty wherever it happens. Charitable groups shouldn't have to compete with each other to get dollars to help people. They should coordinate and they should work together to help people. There also has to be a sense of awareness, not only during, say, Christmas time, where we try and be generous and we start giving turkeys and we start, giving gifts to young children and we start giving to charity. This should be a concern every day of the year, because this is a problem that occurs every day of the year. Charities are important. People do need them. And we, as individuals, have to be aware that we have a lot of poor people in our community. We have to be aware that we, ourselves, might need help.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Now we move to the concluding remarks. Each candidate will have roughly 2 minutes, and we are going to start with Mr. Weston.
Thank you very much. And once again, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out today and participating in this forum. I certainly have enjoyed the last few weeks getting around the riding and speaking to individuals when we talk about election campaign and hearing what's on your minds. And I heard one comment up here today that kind of troubled me in the sense that we talk about how tax cuts don't help the poor. We have to remember there's a working poor within our society as well. And tax cuts can benefit the working poor in a huge way. When we talk about as a party about taking the GST off home heating bills, that's huge. When we talk about as a party about repealing the carbon tax, that's 4.5 cents on a liter of gasoline. And we talk about taking the taxes off of maternity benefits, that helps the working poor. So those are just a few examples of how tax cuts can help all in our society. But also, when we work together as a community to try to help those that are vulnerable and marginalized, we can certainly pull our community forward. We talked about a variety of issues here today. And as your member of parliament, before 2015, I was very proud to work with a lot of the organizations that are represented here today to deliver on key funding to support their efforts. And I will certainly do that again. My mantra in the previous time in office was working for you. I consider my job to be working for you, and I can't wait to get back to working for you. Thank you.
Mr. Cormier?
Income splitting has never helped a single income family. It's never put food on the table for the people who are only getting the one income, the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage will put food on the table. Getting affordable housing will put food on the table. Getting a government who understands that we need to diversify our economy and start working into a green future will create jobs and put food on the table. From coast to coast to coast, the NDP are gathering behind a well-spoken leader named Jagmeet Singh. And it's not a far-fetched idea or dream to think that our utopian platform could become the Canada that evolves just 2 weeks from now. And I want you to consider the kind of world you could be living in a very short period of time. Thank you.
Mr. Long?
Thank you. I just won't work for you. I'll work with you. I'll work with you hand in hand and stride for stride every day. We all know that we face a very, very serious challenge in this riding with respect to poverty and child poverty. That's why, after I was elected, after there was lack of action on the previous government before 2015, I went to Ottawa, respectfully asked to be placed on HUMA, which oversees poverty reduction in this country. It was my office that spearheaded the national coast to coast to coast poverty reduction study, which led into the poverty reduction strategy. I was thrilled to stand up and vote for the Canada Child Benefit, which changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of children across this country, and watch in astonishment while the Conservatives and the NDP voted against that exact proposal. I want to be your advocate. I want to be your champion. I want to go to bat every day for those in need in this riding who have not had a strong voice in Ottawa for years and years before 2015. And I know if we work together as a community and all three levels of government are aligned, we can continue to cut into the poverty numbers across this community, and I want to lead that charge and be part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Ms. Mcallister?
I believe that we can reduce poverty and that we can make lives better for children, for seniors, for single mothers, for families, for youth. We can do this with a guaranteed basic income, safe, affordable housing, early learning child care, especially important for children who need a leg up and a strong foundation for the future. Free tuition for our students, for immigrants, settlement, language training, a path to citizenship, a path to opportunity through accreditation and not shutting them out of being able to practice their professions. And for unlocking the economic opportunities that climate change is presenting. It's a crisis, yes, but it is also unlocking tremendous economic opportunities because the renewable energy, energy efficiency, and retrofit sector is the largest economic growth sector of the 21st century. Let's harness it.
Mr. Barnett?
So about 4 years ago, we elected out a scandalous government. This year, we might elect out another scandalous government. Who do we choose? Scandal A or Scandal B? Let's have a different perspective. Let's step out of our comfort zone. Let's break the status quo. Let's have ideas, new accountability. Now, if you want to know a little bit about me, and you know how I think, I actually bought a prop. Can I use a prop? I'm going to show you something. We talk about the green economy, and we see these beautiful signs telling people to vote for you because we stand for you and we are green. But I'm going to show you something that you've never seen before. Now this is green. It's made of dewlap. These are my signs. Nobody's ever done this before. I'm asking people, think outside the box. Break the status quo.
Mr. Jameson?
Oh, thank you very much. I want to bring up a topic. You've seen my signs or seen them in the newspaper. I'm talking about what a lot of people I have met and been talking about is our democracy in Canada. And I think this is a major problem that we're facing that we don't really realize is happening, but a lot of people do. I'm pro-life. It's my religious belief. I believe in the sanctity of the human life. And to us who are Christians, it is our belief that life begins in the womb and ends in the grave, and our spiritual beliefs are under attack. Now, I've met with much of the clergy in this city, and they feel the same way as Christians, that our beliefs are under attack. There are certain parties that are running in this campaign that will not allow a person who is pro-life to run for them. And in the end, that is a problem that people who are Christians or other minorities are not being accepted in government because of their religious beliefs. Now, people who are pro-choice, that is your choice. And we should not judge anybody. Jesus came not to judge, nor should Christians judge anybody. But the thing is this, the line has been drawn and our country is in a battle because of it. We should work together to help women through education, to help them. not become pregnant. We should help them when they are pregnant to make a decision. Freedom of speech is that this is the problem here. Freedom of speech is a problem. I want to end by just saying we should work together to help women who are faced with pregnancy to determine whether they want to have the baby. 70% of pregnancies is birth control. We should work together to help women find a way, a better way. You know, this
Thank
is
you,
a
Mr.
problem
Jamens.
in Canada.
Thank you. Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our debate. I want to thank the audience for coming out on a, I'm sure, busy day. I want to thank all the candidates for making time to come out and speak your views, and also thank you for putting your name on the ballot. It's a big risk and it takes a lot of hard work, and we thank you for your service. I'd like to also thank Port City Productions for doing the sound and lighting, and again thank the Chinese Cultural Center and St. John Human Development Council and Randy Hatfield for organizing this debate. Thanks a lot.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
When you become a Rogers volunteer, it's always an opportunity for everybody to come together and try different things that they've never been able to do before.
What I've learned here is different skills that I thought I would never even be interested in learning.
By being here at Rogers, I can learn all these different things that will help me be stronger.
Working here as a volunteer is a good way to get to know your community. It's a good way to learn how to work as a part of a team.
They're people from our community, so they know and they have a heart for our community to step outside of our comfort zone and do more.
Don't be afraid, because this is where you're going to gain the most valuable experience that you can use in your future.
I encourage everybody to be a volunteer at Rogers TV because not only do you grow professionally, you grow personally as well.
What's up, guys? Chris Dobson, Chris Corey here from New Brunswick's favorite sports show, Across the Line. We talk to everybody from football, golf, hockey, Hall of Fame. It doesn't matter. We always have a great time when we're here in studio, and hey, you never know who's going to drop by.
Hey, lots of celebrities, lots of New Brunswick's finest coming by the studio to talk sports, have a little fun with New Brunswick's favorite sports talk show, Across the Line, right here on Rogers TV.
This is Rogers TV, New Brunswick.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
They were just kids from New Brunswick. Never even left the North Shore before. Dad trained them the best he could. But how could they possibly be prepared? This was the biggest operation the world had ever seen. He'd already served in the First World War, earned the right to stay home, raise his children. But how could he send those boys into battle and not be by their side? Many were killed that day. One was my father.